So we have a lot of stuff to cover here, and we have a lot of information to provide. Stuff that some of it, in fact, a good chunk of it, you're not going to hear on mainstream media, but you're going to hear it here. Okay. And first, we want to do a check on Instagram. How we doing? Doesn't show Instagram. Does it show Instagram? Facebook? Facebook? Instagram is not. All right. Well, let's see here.
Hers is.
Wait,
we got it.
You got Instagram? Okay.
Does X take a while?
Some of them might take a bit. It's kind of weird. Okay. Oh, it's buffering. Okay, so it's thinking about it. All right. Well, let's give Instagram a few seconds to catch up. Okay. Let's see here. All right. Okay, so we're live on Instagram now. Good. I think, okay, we're live on that. Anybody on X?
It's not on X.
Not on X?
No live on X.
No live on X? All right. Well, we covered the three, so, well, let's work with what we got. Okay, we have a message here on X. Let's see, should I click this one? Okay. Okay, I see. You gotta laugh at all these technology platforms. They know they want you to use it because they're always going to ask you to upgrade. Now they want a premium account on stuff that I already did before without the premium account. So nothing unusual there. All right, folks. So with that, now that we know that, let's keep moving. Well, let's start with the obvious. First and foremost is a huge shout out to the men and women that are wearing tan and green, and the ones in blue, and the ones in camouflage, and all the other assorted uniforms that are out there on the front lines, trying to keep LA safe from both the rioters and the shameless politicians who are trying to blame this whole thing on the guy on the other side of the country. Bizarre. But big shout out to them. I know you're working long hours, especially if you're wearing tan and green. You're working real long hours, and you're sitting in parking lots. You got lounge chairs out there waiting for that call to go to the front lines and take care of some business, but the calls are not being made, and so you're just spending hours and hours in parking lots in the middle of nowhere. And that's directly as a result of the piss poor leadership of your sheriff. Now we've seen we've initiated a grid search for the sheriff. We found him in one press conference and in one photo op in a helicopter. That's all we've seen. Any other sightings? Nope. Apparently that's all the sightings we have on Bunker Bob, but that's par for the course. So with that, let's kind of go through the timeline of events here to see how this unfolded till we got to where we are today. And it started pretty much on Friday, I think, when ICE was doing enforcement actions in LA City in particular. And the union SEIU, United Service Workers West, and Chirla, they got this thing called Rapid Response Network, which they're trying to do is basically when ICE goes about doing enforcement action, they want to surround the ICE officers with a mob and prevent them from doing that. But these geniuses that are doing that don't understand when you do that, you're actually obstructing federal law enforcement officers from doing their job, and that is a crime. Okay? And when two or more are actually involved in that, three or more, now you got conspiracy on top of that. You got obstruction of justice and impeding a federal officer, just like that one union leader, David Huerta, found out the hard way. That's not a smart idea. Now, the point is, we do want to encourage people to protest peacefully. I think that's everyone's understanding of the Bill of Rights, and it's something that we cherish here in the United States, the ability to assemble and protest and petition government. All right. Somebody went echo there. So that is fine to do that. And that involves staying on the sidewalk, staying out of the way of officers or whatever federal agents doing their job, and hold your signs. That's all fine. If you want to get a permit to march down the street, do it. But you work with local law enforcement, get the permit, make sure traffic is not harmed and you're not blocking key entry exits and emergency vehicles, all these things. But none of that is happening now, because now the environment has totally changed. So from that event on Friday, when these people in their rapid response network corralled in the ICE agents at a place they were doing an enforcement action, they called for help. And what did not happen? LAPD did not come to their rescue. The sheriff's department did not come to their rescue. And they took it to their superior and said, hey, the local law enforcement are not helping us. We need help. That eventually wound its way up to the White House, and they said, well, let's get the National Guard involved. And now you got National Guard deployed. Okay, it took them a while to get here, but as a result of that back and forth, the problem only grew and festered, became emboldened. And then you have activists, paid activists, agitators, they all descended on the area to foment anarchy. And it started building up. Saturday was more activity than Friday. And then come Sunday, now you had a huge display of violence. You had the National Guard finally arrive. They surrounded the federal buildings to prevent them, particularly the Metropolitan Detention Center, prevent that from being vandalized. But over the weekend, all the public buildings were defaced. I think LAPD headquarters, there was some fool with a skateboard smashing all the windows. They tagged everything with a lot of stuff you can't even print publicly. The media was struggling to cover it without having all the obscene words appearing on their background. So this was it was very interesting. And a lot of these people are paid. They're paid agitators. Yep. Chirla looks like they spent a lot of money that came from taxpayers, from the state. I know from the county received some money from Chirla. The state gives Chirla a ton of money, and they call it organizing and networking. But actually what they're doing is they're organizing protesters. That is what they're doing. So now there's a letter that went out from a Senate subcommittee on, I believe, on criminal justice. What's the name of that subcommittee? Not reform. No, something else. But there's a Republican senator who is the chair of this committee, issued a letter to Angelica Salas, who runs Chirla, telling her, well, you're going to have to show me all your receipts, and there's going to be a subpoena and preserve all the records, because now they're going to expect where the taxpayer dollar was going, and was it actually funding these activities, which is now has devolved into domestic terrorism. Okay, that's a sad state of affairs, but that's what's going on. So Sunday night was the worst of the worst that we saw, and that's where they were breaking up the sidewalk, throwing chunks of concrete on the skirmish lines. And at this point, finally, LAPD shows up, Sheriff's Department shows up. They have skirmish lines here and there, and they're trying to control an unruly mob. So people think they're trying to be peaceful protesters. You're just full of shit. All right, there's nothing peaceful about this. If you look at the amount of damage and the amount of people protesting, you realize, no, there was nothing peaceful about anything. I think today, I want to say we finally saw something that looked organized more or less like a march down Alameda, down the middle of the street. That looks more like what a peaceful protest is supposed to look like. And how do I know? Because in 2020, when I was in office, we had 20,000+ people march in front of the Hall of Justice. This is during the Summer of Love of George Floyd. And that, there was no violence there. People stayed within their lane on the street. They held their signs, said whatever they wanted to say, make a fool of themselves, whatever, expressed their First Amendment right, and they did so peacefully. It's the knuckleheads that showed up at midnight dressed in NFL tackle gear that were the problem. They're not protesters. So this crowd here that burned the Waymos, defaced all the buildings, threw rocks, fireworks, frozen water bottles, you name it, at cops everywhere, those are not peaceful protesters. And unfortunately, that was the bulk of what happened. Okay. The people that went onto the freeway to block traffic, well, you're hurting people when you do that. Emergency vehicles that are trying to get from point A to point B are not getting there, which means someone who probably had a heart attack, had to get to the hospital, dies in the ambulance. So if you block one of those freeways, I doubt it would be your abuelita that was stuck in an ambulance, but odds are someone's abuelita was stuck in the ambulance dying because they could not get through the mess. And that's just irresponsible. It should never, ever happen. So now, not only that, they get onto the freeway, and this is where we'll talk about the leadership part in law enforcement. You had protesters above the freeway on the overpass. So you have Aliso, you have Arcadia, and you have Alameda. And Alameda is an overpass to the 101 freeway. They go down the on-ramps and the off-ramps. They block traffic. Then the CHP lines up a bunch of vehicles to go down onto the freeway to confront and get the protesters off the freeway. But in so doing, they expose themselves to all the high ground where all the agitators and anarchists armed with chunks of concrete. And what do? They start raining onto these cruisers, these black and whites from the Highway Patrol. Highway Patrol abandoned them and ran underneath the freeway. So they're hiding under the freeway for like an hour, finding a way to be rescued. And this is where I just don't understand who was in charge. Apparently nobody was in charge because everyone was so afraid. This is law enforcement leadership, LAPD, not the ones on the ground. If you give in this scenario to boots on the ground deputies or LAPD officers, they probably could have come up with a plan of rescue, which involved clearing the top of the freeway, get them out of there. But nope. It took about an hour before they finally figured out what to do. And sadly, I think they destroyed 6 vehicles or something like that? About 6. Who knows how many more at that point. There was vehicles destroyed in other places. Channel 5 had their vehicle destroyed, windows smashed, tagged up. Channel 11 had their vehicles destroyed, stuff stolen, tagged up, destroyed. Channel 4 had their vehicle all shredded up. It makes you wonder, these people are demanding all of this about ICE and the federal government. They seem to really don't like to be photographed doing all the bad things that they're doing. Ain't that something? So transparency, it doesn't seem to be high on the agenda of these agitators because they're obsessed with it. In fact, there's a flyer that we got. Okay, flyers giving out to press in downtown LA. Are you going to put the camera away or am I going to smash it? So yesterday, mass protesters were handing out these flyers to anyone with a press media badge. Just like the George Floyd protests, they don't want anyone recording the actions of violence. And then this one individual says, during the Floyd riots, they attempted to taser me for not putting away my phone to record destruction of property. Wow. And that, then they said I was assaulted many times for recording violence. And there was a viral video of a kid on a cell phone, and not a professional, just someone who's recording. And some guy with a mask got all up in his face about him recording on video. So what are these people so concerned about? I mean, why do they hide their face? If they're so convinced about the moral superiority of their cause, why do they hide their face? Okay, then you have the politicians. Now, this is a really disgusting group of individuals. We can start with AOC. We got Gavin Newsom. We have Karen Bass. You have Janice Hahn. You have Eunice Hernandez. That's my favorite one because she's out there actually wanting the protesters to get bigger and bigger. What does she think going to happen with these protests getting bigger and bigger? People are going to get hurt. People are going to go to jail. Some people are going to wind up in the hospital because you actually told them to do that. They thought they had the cover of the establishment. Look, we have a righteous cause. They're telling us to go do it. And you're going to hurt people. And if you do that trying to block federal enforcement action, now you could be possibly held accountable for obstruction of justice. And that, then on top of that, you had the looting that went on. There was a little bit of looting on, I think, Saturday night it started. And then by Sunday, it was like 6. By Monday, it was like over 20 places. It just destroyed the downtown area. You saw the images of people basically cleaning out the Apple store in downtown LA. You had a jewelry store that was destroyed, graffiti everywhere, shoe store, you name it. Downtown places of business, retail outlets, just destroyed. And all the cars that were set on fire, I think there was 5 Waymos in a row that were set on fire. And then another vehicle was set on fire, then dumpsters set on fire. I mean, it was a hot mess. And the point is, where was law enforcement this entire time? There's nothing worse than having a car set on fire and law enforcement doesn't escort the fire department in to stop, to put it out. Because what happens when you set one on fire, then you set another, and then all of a sudden it becomes a contagious thing. You got everything is on fire. So this, I'm just wondering, what was the mentality on this? So, but all the politicians, it seemed like they all had a script, they were all issued. It's mostly peaceful protest, peaceful protest. They kept repeating this phrase, peaceful protest. And I'm saying bullshit. There's nothing peaceful about what's going on here. And then you have one genius. In fact, where's that one? The one about the urban policy roundtable? This will go down as one of the dumbest comments I've ever heard. Okay. LA Urban Policy Roundtable is calling for a full ban on LAPD's use of non-lethal bullets after new video shows an uninvolved civilian injured during recent protests. With more than 2,000 injuries and 300 disabilities linked to these rounds nationwide, it's time to stop the harm. Wow. Can you get any dumber than this? And this is going to be Mr. Earl O'Farrell Hutchinson, if I'm not mistaken, the self-appointed president for life for the Urban Policy Roundtable. Well, tell you what, Mr. Earl O'Farrell, how about we initiate a ban on bricks, a ban on hammers, a ban on frozen water bottles in protest? You want to do that? Let's continue disarming cops so they have absolutely nothing left but their batons and their guns. How many people do you think are going to get injured when cops come to attack with that? And this is the outcome, because remember, LAPD doesn't have tear gas. They don't have gas masks. They don't have pepper ball launchers. They don't have sting ball grenades. All the things that the sheriff's department has in their armory, which are very effective, don't injure, really. And you look at the claims of the sheriff's department versus LAPD on these mass protests, you realize, wow, the sheriff's department doesn't rack up that many claims of injuries. Because when you restricted LAPD to just the rubber bullet, their batons and their guns, well, guess what? They're shooting a lot of rubber bullets because, you know, hitting people with batons creates a lot of injury. Shooting people, obviously, lethal force. So all you have left is the rubber bullet, the 40 millimeter, whatever. And so the LA Police Commission, in their infinite wisdom, and the city council voted to basically screw over the LAPD just as an exercise in virtue signaling, thinking that, oh, we're going to solve something. Well, you're not going to solve violence. You're not going to stop people from dumping off pallets of bricks. They're running around with hammers and breaking sidewalks and throwing that stuff at law enforcement. And you got a bunch of injuries now as a result of that. So this is all of your own making, LA Police Commission. You created this dilemma when you restricted the LAPD from having other tools that are very, very useful in crowd riot, crowd control. And in 2020, we had the opportunity to actually use all these implements, and they were very, very successful at it. Our department. Our only issue was when we lined up with LAPD, they told us not to deploy tear gas because they had no gas masks. Another dumb decision from the police commission. Why would you restrict that? Because now you have actual protesters throwing tear gas, getting their hands on pepper spray and doing all these things, and bear spray and stuff. Oh yeah, you got to go in all kinds of ways. So again, people do not think. Politicians want to look good in their little circle of friends and cocktail parties and all that stuff. But when it comes to the boots on the ground, what the conditions are facing, and here's Simon, who's exercising his opinion of what he thinks about LA politicians. Yes, he thinks they're a joke. I agree, Simon. So now you have that. So go back if you can, find out who was the I don't know what to call him, the genius who decided, hey, let's get rid of this. LAPD doesn't need that. They don't need that. Of course not. Now you have the result. Okay. So then you had this weird pissing match. Well, actually, before that, let's go to the media coverage. Depending on what station you were, Fox showed a lot of the stuff, a lot of the damage. Other stations, not so much. MSNBC, they didn't show hardly anything at all. I don't know why. Literally, they had nothing to say. Very, very strangely. So we got a lot of information from Fox, from Newsmax, OAN. 4, 7, 11. Well, 4, 11, and 5. I don't know what they did after their trucks got all busted up. But sadly, that's the state of affairs we're at here in LA. So there was some media on the ground, and there was one from Fox 11, KTTV, and she tried to say, well, everywhere I'm at, it's all very peaceful, but it depends on where you're at. And some people have a peaceful experience, and others are, oh my God, others not so much. It's like, are you kidding me? Especially on Saturday and Sunday. There were not that many protesters in comparison to the amount of damage, because most of the people there were dedicated to damaging, assaulting, rioting, doing all that. Once the crowds got bigger and bigger and they started marching, okay, now the scenario changes. You still have the same damage going on, and you had all the looting, but you had more people that were actually trying to protest and do the normal thing. So then you had all these ubiquitous Mexican flags waving everywhere. And you had people interviewed, and which is a weird thing. A lot of the press did not want to interview the protesters. They did not want to put someone with a bandana and the Mexican flag, put them on camera. Why? If their cause was so righteous, why did you not talk to them? You had hardly anybody. All you got was some of the politicians from a very, very safe distance. Maxine Waters, the strange oddity out of that group, because she went knocking on the Metropolitan Detention Center demanding to be entered. Well, they're not dumb. They know, no, this is a drama propaganda thing. There's a way to get into these facilities, but when they're under attack by a mob, no, you don't allow people that are leading the mob into the detention center. So they righteously closed the door on her, and then she was out there yelling, and it was just I don't know how else to describe it, but embarrassing, if that's what a congressional representative is. And strangely, she doesn't even live in the district that she represents, and the district she represents looks like a shithole. I mean, it is horrible. Homeless everywhere, violent crime, gangs, desperation. And she's been in Congress now going on almost 30 years. So it seems like she's good at keeping her job, but not so much about actually improving the lives of people in her district that she doesn't even live in. But that's Maxine Waters for you. All right. So that you got to lay that squarely on the shoulders of the people that keep voting into office. Okay, Maxine Waters Tuesday said there was no violence happening in Los Angeles. Wow. She said, I was on the street. I know. Get it straight. Don't rely on what you're being told. No, they're relying on what they're seeing with their own two eyes, Maxine. I mean, this is embarrassing. I don't know how else to describe that. So with that, let's see here. So the media coverage was kind of lousy because we wanted to talk. We wanted to hear from all these brave souls that want to throw chunks of concrete at cops, but are hiding their face. Then the politicians got involved, and then it's somehow Trump's fault. Yeah, I didn't know Trump was in there, handing out bricks to these people, but apparently, the way the way Governor Newsom was trying to sell it, and Karen Bass, that it's all Trump's fault, that he's inciting violence. And that's just not, it's laughable, okay? Because the federal government has the right to enforce federal law. That never changed. For all these politicians that spent the last decade with sanctuary city this, sanctuary county, sanctuary state, and all this virtue signaling, it does not nullify federal law. And each politician who took an oath of office, part of that oath of office, I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, see, that first part of that oath of office means you have to support the federal government, and everything they're doing is lawful. It is lawful for ICE to conduct search warrants and arrest people with criminal arrest warrants. It is lawful for them to do that. Is it wise to go beyond that to catch anybody else involved in an area? Probably not. And I think they could do better in that regard because they're generating more resistance than they need to just get the job done. And that's something I think ICE needs to figure out. And that's my recommendation to ICE. Stick to your goals. You said there's 647,000 felons with arrest warrants around the country. Get them. I think most people support it. But going after Abuelita at the bus stop or at the car wash, someone who happened to be a customer at a car wash because they were there for somebody else, you're going to start losing people there. But let's set that aside. But the point is, they are doing something lawful. They have the right to do that. And if someone is opposed to what they're doing, well, one thing is, if you're going to immigration court and you've been given a final order to deportation, you have to follow it. Yes, we're a nation of laws. You got to follow the laws. Okay? You're given due process if you're going through immigration court. If there's a search warrant, an arrest warrant, the due process part has already been solved because the issue has already been before a magistrate. So the claim that there's no due process, I'm not buying that at all. Okay? That's just sheer propaganda. There was a story today about, oh my God, they're raiding a church in Downey. No, they were chasing some fool who was trying to run away from them. They caught them in the church parking lot. They were not there to raid a church. So the hysteria needs to calm down. All right, it's getting dumb. And now, as a sheriff, the role of the sheriff is to call the balls and the strikes. The sheriff is not in the position to decide which side is the right side or side with, based on your political ideology and what you think you're trying to satisfy the establishment. No, your role is actually follow the rule of law. And the sheriff is in no position to deny aid to a fellow law enforcement officer under attack, be it federal, state, county, city, tribal. That's not part of the bargain. When you took the oath of office as sheriff, you also took that same oath that says you're going to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States. So when you have agents of the United States doing their job lawfully, okay, if you come to their aid because they're under assault, doesn't mean you're endorsing or supporting whatever they're doing. No, it just means you're supporting, the safety of a fellow law enforcement officer. You're ensuring their safety. And that has been department policy for decades before I came on the department. In fact, we even have it part of our policy that we will not decline to rescue an officer in need. That's important. That is the sheriff's department's DNA, and Mr. Bunker Bob violated it when he told them to stand down. When Chief Jim McDonald told them to stand down and not support ICE, they violated it as well. And what became of that? Anytime you screw up like that, your problem only gets worse. It gets bigger. It doesn't get smaller. And what happened with them trying to believe they were successful, the protesters got bigger and bigger. They planned, hey, we got away with this. Let's plan bigger. So now it's a real quick check. Can we see X?
It's not on.
It's not on?
I looked.
Here it shows it is on, but no. All right, well, we'll work out all the kinks on this. How are we doing sound-wise?
We have our sound off because
Yeah, it will. All right, well, we haven't heard any comments. All right, yeah, you did.
Yeah, I checked it for you guys.
All right, we're good, yeah. This is, and someone wrote here, imagine politicians trapped under the overpass with no help. They would be all over the news. Yeah, they would. So this is the deal. So McDonald and Luna both failed to do their job when they were required to, because they had to go past the wishes of the political establishment and stick their neck out there. That's something I did for 4 years. Okay, it cost me a re-election, but I wasn't there to become a career anybody. I was there to actually do the job of sheriff. And that means sometimes you do things that are popular, sometimes you do things that are unpopular, but you always have to do the right thing. It's not left or right, it's right or wrong. In this case, both Luna and McDonald got it wrong. On the McDonald side, he has to answer to the police commission and the mayor. And can I get that thing about the mayor? I think you had it. Yeah. Let's discuss the mayor's role here, because this is where it gets kind of weird. Now, thanks. Now remember this, on I think Saturday, Jim McDonald said he was overwhelmed. His troops were overwhelmed. And I believe come Monday morning or something, there was some press conference, and now he was reading from a script with the mayor right at his shoulder. He looked like a prisoner. He was trying to blink a code, like, help me, I'm being held hostage. It was kind of sad to see, because he looked like a defeated man. Okay, this is what this says. Last night, when Department of Homeland Security and the FBI requested assistance because they were overwhelmed by rioters, LAPD sat idle waiting for direction. There should be no sitting idle waiting for direction. You tell them, hey, go get them. That's what you're supposed to do. And McDonald, I know you've been in law enforcement for a little bit longer than I have, but you missed it on that one. That was your time to shine. Okay, instead of allowing the incident commander to act, Mayor Karen Bass bypassed established protocol. She called the incident command for a briefing, then called the chief of police to tell him what to do. By personally directing operations, Bass functioned as a de facto incident commander. In direct conflict with the city's emergency operations plan and National Incident Management System, NIMS, protocols. This breach of this chain of command prevented the incident commander from making crucial operational decisions and put the Department of Homeland Security officers and FBI agents and community members at risk and delayed immediate LAPD support. That is about as specific as it gets, and that came from inside the LAPD. Okay. On the sheriff's side, it's even worse. One, you couldn't find him because he was hiding under his desk somewhere. And then the incident management teams weren't called up until like 5 days into it. Now they're saying on Friday they're going to go on 12 shifts, probably when it winds down. Now they're going to go on 12 shifts. And no direction whatsoever from the sheriff, no commander's intent other than let's not do anything. Let's not get involved. So you had all these deputies, well, highly trained, the best trained in the nation, chomping at the bit to go out there, you know, the proverbial kick ass and take names. Yeah, get the riders, you know, in handcuffs, stop the rioting, save the city. No, they weren't allowed to. They were told to hide in a parking lot and wait. And they waited. And they waited. In some cases, they waited 15 hours and did nothing. Then reports came in about other agencies. Oh, they arrested all these people. Oh, they arrested all these people. I think Santa Ana, in a few hours, had 10 people hooked up. And the entire time, days that went by, you know how many people LASD arrested? 2. With that size of a personnel that were available, you know, multiple squads, I should have expected, you know, 200, 300, something like that, based on the size of the problem at a minimum. No, 2. That, in a nutshell, is why Bunker Bob is an absolute failure as sheriff, and he needs to go. In fact, he should resign now, not even wait for the elections, because that is just an astonishing abandonment of his job and his function. And then at the, you know, set LAPD aside, as a sheriff, he's responsible for mutual aid for both LA and Orange County, because the entire state is divided into 7 regions. In the region of LA and Orange County, the sheriff of LA is the one who's a mutual aid coordinator. So he's the one that's supposed to take any request for mutual aid, be it from the federal government, from local municipalities, from the state highway patrol, and use his resource at his disposal to get them there. And then if he runs out, he calls the California Office of Emergency Services, Cal OES, requests more resources, which is exactly what we did in 2020. When we were running short on personnel, we had 11 riots going on at the same time all over the county. I call up the first 500 National Guard members through Cal OES. They sent them our way. Turns out we found out later on they were kidnapped by LAPD and diverted to Bel Air to protect rich people's homes. So that pissed me off. So I had a nice call with Cal OES and said, you owe me 500 more. And they were very graceful and they gave me 500 more. And then they said, hey, you know what? Our bad. We'll never have anything diverted again. And they corrected that mistake. And it all went through our Department of Operations Center. I was supposed to be. From that point forward, it worked smoothly. We had the cooperation we needed. And there was nothing going on in LA County in 2020 like what we're seeing today. Nothing. Okay. Of the 4,000 square miles of LA County, the Sheriff's Department has jurisdiction about 3,100 square miles, over 3/4 of the county. There were no riots. There was no widespread looting, vandalism, destruction, nothing. Why? Because the deputies were empowered to take action. They were empowered to actually go out there and do the right thing. And they had no handcuffs on their, handcuffing their actions. They had handcuffs to put on crooks. And they did that. When LAPD finally got over their initial thing, they went to work too, and they did perform very well. Santa Monica learned way too late. And by the time we got there to help them out, the promenade was in ruins. We got to Long Beach, took care of business there because Robert Luna was hiding in the bunker of a fire station, hence the term Bunker Bob. And we took care of business there, and we stopped the looting in Long Beach. So you have to be swift in your response. You have to be decisive. And anytime you're not any of the two, bad things happen. Because any delay, any fecklessness is perceived as weakness. And who fills the void and weakness? The stronger. And in this case, unfortunately, over the weekend, the stronger were the riders. The agitators, the page agitators, the Antifa, anarchists, whatever you want to call them. All those fools out there masked up, waving flags that are not U.S. flags, burning U.S. flags and spitting on them. No. I want to thank the National Guard that showed up, Marines that showed up, because they served a very valuable purpose. They protected all the federal buildings. And in 2020, we had them protecting our buildings as well, county buildings. But that's why you coordinate between the different entities, make sure everything is covered. Because the guardsmen, the Marines don't have the training to go out there on the street and actually start separating, peaceful protesters from rioters. That's why you have highly trained state and local law enforcement to do that. So when you have them deployed to fix assets to protect that so they don't get trashed, now you have more people available, freed up to go out there and go after the rioters. It works well when you have leadership that gets that going. All right, this is too little, too late. The damage was done. And the damage is not just all the vandalism and destruction we saw. It's also economic damage. How many businesses had to close down now because of a curfew that was about 3 days too late in the making? How many businesses lost a lot because of that? How many businesses are losing future customers because they don't want to really go down to the downtown court anymore because of the perception of danger? That's going to be economic impact that's going to last months. How many companies are not booking conventions in the LA Convention Center anymore? In fact, the information is a closely guarded secret. Why? Because I'm pretty sure it's tanking as we speak. See, these are all the things. Where is the investigative reporter reporting on the economic impact of LA being the nation's capital for homelessness, for retail theft, and now vandalism, arson, and all these other, fun choices? Where is that? It's nowhere to be found. Why? Because the media has given up on actually informing the public. Now it's independent journalists that are the ones that have to fill the void. Let's see. So what else do we have here? And we have, okay. Now McDonald got something right when he said that we're overwhelmed, because he was speaking honestly. And obviously they had him lock his heels and say, read from a script the next time. But there was an encounter that happened, was it today at the city council? About when the councilwoman asked him about, what was it?
To notify the community.
Oh yeah.
Here, you want to play it? It's right here.
Oh yeah, here we go. Let's play it. This is kind of fun. McDonald got it right. Okay. I know I beat him up, but when he does something right, I'm also going to tell him, good job.
Can you hear? Turn the volume up. You want to read it first?
Let me see.
And then
Okay.
Back it on my finger.
Council Marxist Imelda Padilla. Okay. LA County City Council operates like the mafia, demanding loyalty from the chief of police. Wow. All right. Can we play it?
Coming in from Antelope Valley, I don't know. You can warn us so that we can warn our folks in the spirit of your loyalty to the city of Los Angeles.
So you're asking me to warn you about an enforcement action being taken by another agency before it happens?
Yeah,
Yeah, we can't do that.
why not?
That would be obstruction of justice. You may want to talk to the city attorney about that.
Good job.
Ouch. That's right. Round of applause for McDonald. He got it right. It's refreshing to see a bit of truth being shoved down the throats of a really not, or a very not bright council person, Imelda Padilla. Wow. So it can happen, folks. So
Hopefully Jimmy's nuts won't be in a jar.
that's true, because we already know Lunas are gone. So we'll have to keep an eye on him, make sure he doesn't end up on a milk carton somewhere. And with that, okay, let's go to the questions. I think I covered the ones I wanted to cover. Let's see here. All right. Okay, questions. We got, oh Lord Jesus. Man, people got into the questions here. Okay, Officer Situate. Luna is worse because everyone has known for years how weak the LAPD leadership has been over the past decade. LASD once had strong leadership. However, thanks to Bunker Bob, Luna has made the LASD worse. No argument there. There, you're right on the money. Okay, Michelle FG77. Chicago chief said he talked to LAPD chief. He was told the city waited several hours to respond. Yeah, that they did. and that was too late. Okay. Lolly Dolores 72. Conference was funny. They can't answer a question because they are not telling them anything about the raids. Very true. MGR 012345. Who is behind distributing gas masks and bricks to the demonstrators? That's a good question. Well, we know the one that was handing out the gas masks from the back of a pickup truck, he was identified, and he's a little brown beret nut job. And there's already a video or a flyer on him. And that mental giant is still trying to relive the 60s, I guess. He probably has his Che Guevara t-shirt as well. And let me see. Okay, this one here. All right. Okay. Official situate. Sheriff, what would you have done in this situation if this happened under your watch? Would you allow LSD to assist ICE with immigration enforcement? Well, that's a good question. The role of the sheriff is to provide for the public safety. Okay. Federal government does federal government enforcement, be it ICE, FBI, ATF, DEA, and all that. That's their job. The job of local law enforcement is public safety. Okay. However, just because we come to the aid of ICE immigration enforcement, doesn't mean that we're endorsing or supporting what their main function is. They can remain separate, but we have to come to their aid when they come under fire. It's as simple as that. And I know the Bass, the mayor, the governor, they were so obsessed with the optics of, oh my God, having local law enforcement aid ICE, it's pathetic. Okay. The job of the sheriff is public safety. And just because you're a federal immigration officer or agent doesn't mean that you're unworthy of public safety and you're going to be thrown to the wolves because we can't be associated with you. No. If the sheriff's department comes to your aid, it's because we're coming to your aid. We're not there enforcing immigration law. I think McDonald made it clear. I think Daryl Gates made it clear back in 1979. All right. So this goes without saying. So it's kind of sad when this solution is with the way it's framed is you're either for us or against us. No. The role of the sheriff, the role of local law enforcement is public safety. And anybody who's under attack, any public official doing any public act lawful, they should be provided protection for that. Okay, if they're under attack. It's as simple as that. Nothing strange about it. Mojo 220, do you think the traffic incident involving the federal agent in Boyle Heights today should have been handled different? Was crashing the suspect vehicle considered excessive force? Well, that's going to be up to, I don't have all the facts on that case, but if they crash the suspect vehicle, typically that's somebody who is of high value that needs to be detained. Probably a felony suspect. So I have no problem with that, but I'm hoping that obviously they document their actions. 559 Daria. Any update on the Lancaster deputy shot over the weekend? Crickets on the story. Yeah, it kind of faded overnight because all the rioting going on in LA. Last update I heard, stable condition, but the wound he received was serious. It perforated, I believe, his colon, his intestine, and his road to recovery is going to be long. Thankfully, though, it missed the spinal cord and things like that. So that's what do we have here? Alex Michelson, new ICE out of Whittier. I was sent this video of protesters demonstrating Whittier. See? There you have it, folks. Well, the fact that they're on the sidewalk with signs, good. That's a good way to do it. All right. Apparently, ICE is staying at a local hotel in Whittier, and well, they're going to stay somewhere. They're going to do their work, so that's just what it is. Okay.
Can you explain that one for the 10th
Oh yeah, Johnny Biggie Time seems to have an issue with my position. Back in the day, Villanueva said no ice in county jails. And he also said Special Order 40. Well, Special Order 40 and my position on ICE in the jails is pretty much the same. You're separating the two. ICE has a job to do. They should be allowed to do their job. Local law enforcement has a job to do. You can't do the two together, because I can't tell someone who's a victim of domestic violence, hey, tell me what happened. Oh, by the way, I'm going to deport you. They're incompatible. It's like water and oil. Keep the two separate, but they both are very important functions to do. When it comes to people that have a criminal arrest warrant, we told ICE, get your arrest warrant, criminal arrest warrant, and we can more than happy turn it over. And you know what? Big props to Bill Asaley. In fact, a round of applause for Bill Asaley. I asked for this 5 years ago, and they told me to pound sand. 5 years ago. They finally did it with the second Trump administration. They realized, hey, the administrative detainers they were issuing were not of any value legally. We cannot detain someone on a detainer, but we can detain people on a criminal warrant. Turns out if you get deported, you return to the United States, that's a felony, federal felony, and they can issue a criminal warrant for that. So with that, oh, here we go. Oh boy. They're doing that now. So that's really, and they've been marching people out of Men's Central Jail or IRC, the LA County jail system, with criminal arrest warrants. Perfect. That solved the whole mess. So props to Asaley for doing what we've been asking for a long time. Okay. Jordan D33. Post has a new requirement for deploying less lethal chemical agents during riots. There is a new training required because of some law they passed restricting use of less lethal munitions. Okay, more training. What else is new from Post? They should do training for people that want to, hurl concrete blocks at cops. Ray is CUL. Cool. Ray is cool. Do you think this mobilization by the federal government against the state is part of a greater movement? As a libertarian, I'm afraid of an unrestricted federal leviathan overreaching. Well, good question. I can see your libertarian angle. However, this is something more akin to 1965 when a governor, George Wallace, refused to desegregate the schools after the Supreme Court had already made their decision that overturned the segregated schools. I don't know if that was it Brown versus Board of Education? I think that one. And he refused to segregate. So Lyndon B. Johnson called in the National Guard, and they went, I want to say, was it Arkansas? Alabama? Oh, that's right, Alabama. My bad. And they ensured that the schools were desegregated. And you see those iconic images, a young black girl walking into a school for the first time. They had previously been whites only. And they federalized the National Guard of Alabama to achieve that. In this case, you have sanctuary policies that have been enacted at the city, county, and state level, where they're saying that federal law no longer applies. Well, it's the very same principle from 1965. Federal law does apply. Immigration laws that have been on the books for years apply, and a local jurisdiction can't nullify federal law. Just like in 65. Entirely different topics, of course, but the concept is the same. Federal law is a supremacy clause in the Constitution, while federal law trumps state and local law. This is all this is. But a good point there here on, is this anything bigger? No, I think it's going to remain restricted just to these riotous acts based on ICE. Bob Northan. LAP were told to stand down by Mayor Karen Bass. Yes, I guess the chief of police, Karen Bass. One Purple Pumpkin. The irony that the news vans were destroyed, given that the media is on their side to a degree. The few, not the violets, and the rest, not the violent a-holes. Did I get that right? Well, that's true. You had 3 vans trashed. I mean, there's a lot of money lost there. I'm curious, did they actually cover the fact that their own equipment was trashed? See, if they don't do that, shame on them, because that means they're putting their finger on the coverage.
Some individual reporters did, but they probably got called into HR.
Yeah, the reporters that did. Oh, on social media we saw it, but we didn't see it in the news. It should have been part of the news. Yeah, our stuff got trashed. Fox National did it, but KTTV, Fox 11 should have done it, so should
They did.
Fox 11 did? Okay, well, props to them. What about NBC4 or what about KTLA?
I want to say it was on their social media. Yeah.
Social media? That should have been on their coverage of those news stations. Okay, Lisa Marie, 1347. Chirla is Bass' best friend. She even let them speak at the prayer service. Yep. And Chirla is in hot water. Angelica Salas, she has a lot of answering, a lot of explaining to do in Congress. This should be interesting. Shawnee Bassman. Hall of Justice was tagged and never happened under Alex during the Summer of Love 2020. Huge difference in leadership. Yeah, seeing the Hall of Justice tag, that breaks my heart. I mean, that's just a collapse of leadership if I've ever seen it. Bob Rauscher, what took LAPD hours to respond to the rock throwing from the overpass onto the CHP vehicles and officers? Well, that's a leadership question. Okay. They had the personnel to go and rescue them. They had the ability to clear out those places and get them to safety. And they chose not to, strictly because of the optics. And they were never going to have the numbers to outnumber the protesters. That was never the case. However, I guarantee you they have the ability. And our department, we're used to being outnumbered always. Tina Beck, the feds put out a list of people that were arrested, along with their crimes from the detention center in LA. Can they show their photos? They should. And it was a long laundry list of crimes and, some bad apples. But what we're hearing on the media and the politicians, oh, they chased down Abuelita and tackled her. Nah. Okay, Corrine Perlman. Shame on Newsom and Bass egging them to continue to protest. That's exactly what they did. Instead of being the voice of calm and reason, no, they did worse. And amazing how much they could blame the National Guard or blame Trump for the violence instead of the people with the brick in their hand and the Molotov cocktail. That part I don't get it. Sean O'Neill. So here's the question. If the so-called leaders of our city and state are refusing to take action, what can be done? Well, this is when your sheriff is supposed to step up to the plate. Okay, Johnny Biggie Me, real, huh? Intel Venice? Huh? Oh, Intel Venice says RIP Rush Limbaugh.
Rush Limbaugh died.
He died. No, he died years ago.
Why are we seeing him right now? I don't get it.
Oh, they're probably missing him.
Oh, duh.
Karen Chevel. Hi, Sheriff. I need you back in uniform. You tell the truth. You have courage and throw out politics out the window. You put public safety first. You take no shit from anybody. Thank you, Sheriff. Oh, I appreciate that, Karen. Well, the point is that job calls for public safety. It's not about politics. You want politics, you can be a disgusting congressman or congresswoman. They're all about politics. City council, they're all about politics. When you're governor, when you're in one of these executive positions, mayor, governor, sheriff, you should step up to the plate and put the politics aside because you're supposed to represent everybody. John Fessy absolutely had intent to hurt law enforcement officers, throwing that stuff down in those RMPs should be held to the fullest extent of the law. However, I'm not optimistic that this will happen. Well, I do know that some of them are going to be facing federal accountability, and there are going to be federal charges filed. Those some serious stuff there. Hockman had a press conference today announcing that they're going to be doing charges on people for felonies for assault.
Where was he on the first day this happened?
So let's see what comes of that. We'll wait and see. Patty Guardado. Hello. Good evening, Sheriff and Mrs. Villanueva. Patty Guardado says hi. Vivian. God bless you and thank you for all that you do. You're very much appreciated. Oh, thank you. All right. Marlene Hallorzan. Happy our administration is transcending, going beyond talk, but actually doing the research to find out who is funding this crap. Soros, Dem Libs. Well, we do know, like this No Kings event for this Saturday, this protest across the nation, Christy Walton, heiress to the Walmart fortune, was the one footing the bill. Think of that. Multi-billionaire oligarch funding a protest of people against law enforcement and against ICE. And she is the one responsible for suppressing the wages of people who work at Walmart. Improves her bottom line at the expense of everybody else. Can't make that stuff up. Herb Garcia, thanks for exposing these turds with regards to paid activists or so-called activists. Yeah, there. Manolo Camacho, but by who are they being paid by? Who's the person? Well, we do know of Walton on that. We do know that Chirla is getting money from the state and they're spending money on organizing. And this rapid response network, they got their fingers, they got some dirt on their fingers, and let's see what Congress can come up with. Okay. Marlene Halverson, so I would suggest to Mrs. Salas get her affairs in order because she has a lot of explaining to do. Marlene Halverson, we need you back. Stop soft on crime. California encourages this behavior. Boy, do they. Maestro Magallon, sir, if I thought we were short, now I'm beyond disappointed. How short we are on officers at LAPD. I needed more cops and we didn't. Any additional units are available. Nope, that's exactly right. Craig Kitchen, don't forget to thank Newsom Bass for their great job this week. Great job on the peaceful protest. All right, we got our sarcasm award for the day. Susan Gilbert, what about your thoughts about who is behind supplying them with gas masks and pallets of bricks? They got a lot of footage. I know that the FBI, the feds are busy trying to decipher that. I have no faith that our department is doing the same type of activity because the person who is in charge right now doesn't want to know. So we're going to have to rely on the feds on that to answer that. Manolo Camacho, Marines are on the ground, Compton and Linwood. Well, good. Let's put them to work, make sure they can't trash anything that's public anymore, and let's free up the cops to hit the street. Corrine Perlman, start burning Mexican flags instead of American flags. Imagine if you went to Mexico and you burned a Mexican flag and you're a U.S. tourist. How would that work out? Mm-hmm. Amber Harden. Hey, we got Amber here. Good to hear. If a large mob of people started destroying property and attacking local police in Mexico City while waving American flags, how you think the federales would respond? They're asking for a friend. Well, I think the federales were probably going to say, "Señor, come with me." Let me see. Laura O'Hare, what do you think about the sanctuary cities? I think it's about time to get rid of the policy. I think they should discard it in entirety. All right. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done about fixing immigration law. So we have pathway to citizenship, guest worker program, and green card, permanent legal residency, where we can vet people who come to our country and they contribute to our nation. Okay, and we have to figure out how many and what's the right way to do it so that we know who they are. But this, hey, let 8 million people in, we'll figure it out later. And that's not it. So the sanctuary thing, all it does is create the false illusion that federal law does not apply. And that has very tragic circumstances or consequences. And we're witnessing right now in real time. Manolo Camacho, Linwood, California protest started. Oh, there you go. Lisa Maria, 1347. McDonald lied about the timing, though he said it was 38 minutes, not 2 hours. Well, see, what would be fascinating would be to do a Public Records Act request to get all the communications at the start of when ICE came under fire and on Friday. That'd be fascinating. All right, so let's see if some real journalists, the investigative type that used to exist, let's see if they can do that. Sean O'Neill, citizenship is a privilege, not a right or entitlement. Amen to that. So all of us who were born here in the U.S., remember that's an accident and a birth. You didn't do anything wonderful to achieve that American citizenship. You got here because you were born here, right? I mean, some people, are born on third base and they act like they hit a triple. Okay, Graciela Arenas. Downey had an unmarked, unidentified people attempting to take a man. The community stepped in and they didn't take him. After all, do agents need to show proof like badge before they can take someone? Or can I call 911 to report kidnapping? Good question. Well, we hope they have ID, and I would expect them. I don't know how ICE does their business, but at some point they have to identify who they are to take someone into custody lawfully. John Felci, as many here probably know, there is a talk of major actions planned to take place all around this country this Saturday, 6/14. Please be aware of your surroundings wherever you are and go. Very true. Warrior Princess, how many money did Chitala contribute to Bass and Newsom? Not sure, but we did find out that Newsom got an awful lot of money from George Soros. Yep. I saw the campaign contribution forms. Jonathan Asuna, will you run for sheriff again? We really need you back. Whew. All right. Laura O'Hare, they cried like crazy when fake J6 manufactured riots were being all about. But when officers were truly at risk, they did nothing. Yeah, it's funny how they were all outraged about alleged assaults on January 6th, but here they were actually under assault under blizzard of rocks and bottles and bricks and, professional grade fireworks. And, it was a minor. Oh, no, there was no violence. Valerie Kennedy, McDonald and Luna were both neutered by the LA Board of Supervisors. Yep. Silver Gonzalez, what are your thoughts on the arrest on Whittier Boulevard on the white Mercedes, the way they left the scene? Is that kidnapping? Do we know anything about that? I'm consulting with my Whittier experts here, and they're unfamiliar with this case. Hopefully we'll have details the next time around. Ariana Burke. Praying for law enforcement, military in California. My family and I wish you were still our sheriff. You are needed. Oh, thank you. Appreciate that, Adrian. David Farrell. Years ago, Lieutenant Sid Hill did an LSD training video testing an SUV that was equipped with a directed energy weapon mounted on the roof to use on rioters. Makes your skin feel hot. What happened to that? We need it. I've seen that test, and I don't know what became of it. Good question. Sid Hill was a good man, by the way. Manolo Camacho, should Newsom step down once the fires second this riots? What? Well, Newsom as governor, he's a little bit removed from the problem. The ones that need to step down is Luna and Mayor Bass. Those are the two that are executives elected who are singularly responsible for the decision-making that has led to this whole mess. Even McDonald, he has to act at the behest of the ones that appoint him. Luna doesn't have that coverage. Okay, I think we covered all the questions. That was an enormous amount of questions, but hopefully we answered everything to your satisfaction. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to what we have to say and Stay informed. Let's keep praying for men and women in uniform, be it the Sheriff's Department, LAPD, everyone involved, and from all the mutual aid requests that were honored and people showed up to help in the throughout LA County. We appreciate your efforts. National Guard, our Marines, all our good people in uniform. Thank you for what you're doing. Stay safe out there. And on Lord willing, on Sunday, Father's Day, you'll have the chance, those of you who are fathers, to spend time with your loved ones. Much appreciated. And with it, I think we're good everywhere. Good everywhere. Peace out, everyone, and we'll see you next time. All right.